Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. 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 Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io.
All right, let's get started. I assume the audience will be light. This is midday for a lot of people stateside. but I anticipated a Q&A today from YSM and Ian, and I wanted to ask what I thought to be a pretty simple question at the start of the morning. And it got more complicated as I thought more and more about it. So I drew up some spreadsheets that we'll talk about here shortly. But I want to start this with the caveat of this is not a criticism of the team. This is not a criticism of an individual stable owner. This is just how I see this next season based on how I read the blog. Now, more information could be cleared up in the Q&A with Pete and Ian. And that's, again, the point of trying to get ahead of that so that my deep and well-rounded thoughts on this subject are at least more understood than a two-line question in that sense. So I will share my screen. A second. Just want to make sure everybody can see this. Make it bigger. And a reminder, if anybody wants to join, drop a note in the Twitch chat and then tag me on Twitter. I'll happy to have you up. I'll probably monologue here for 20 to 30 minutes, but then happy to have a discussion immediately after that. Okay, so when I thought about the blog post, the one thing that really jumped out at me was there was a section in there about the race schedule for next season. And there's kind of 4 bullet points within there. One, they acknowledge that daily coverage is going to exist for all grades, surfaces, race types, direction, yada, yada. To me, I read that as every horse is going to have a place to race. Great. That is awesome. That is wonderful. It's exactly what this game needs. The next bullet point is each race type will have full archetype coverage within a 3-day period. So basically saying, drilling down on that further, maybe you didn't love the weather forecast or the specific distance. Within 3 days, you're going to get a fairly tailor-made race towards your horse, which another thing, great. I love it. Improved entry fee structure with fees scaled more distinctly between grades and race types. I think this is good. I think there's always been a lot of conversation around what's the right price point for kind of the allowances, the grade restricted races, because everything should have a ceiling of what kind of a G3 is, and then G2 is greater than G3 and G1 is greater than G2. So if you bring the bottom up, you certainly have to push the top up as well. And I think most stables that are racing near the top end would welcome pushing that top up a little bit higher too, as would we. But here's really the one that really jumped out at me. The addition of restricted juvenile races for horses 2-year-olds, all race types included, 30% cheaper than the base entry fee scaling across race types. So again, I'm going to make some assumptions about what this statement means to me. If I get it wrong in any way, I would love additional clarity on it. If there's something I'm not seeing within it, I would love to be informed on that as well. But based on kind of higher level conversations that had happened over the past week or two, I got the understanding that the team was going to more or less segment these Crop1 racers that are going to start racing on Monday, which I'm super excited for. I hope everybody else is as well. And what will at that time be age 6 Gen 0 horses. So I'm using the assumption that, for lack of a better term, there's going to be double the amount of race lobbies that there are now, because if points 1 and 2 are correct, that coverage is going to be there for everything. If we have that now, we can take what we have for race counts now, and we can say, if you're going to segment these two populations, then potentially you're looking at double the races. Now, again, maybe more to come on that. The other piece of that is these are going to be 30% cheaper than the base entry fees. So Crop1 or juvenile races are going to be 30% cheaper. I know a lot of people have advocated for that. It's cheaper horse discovery. Once you know your horse, the horse will turn 3 the next season. And then certainly you're back to the 100% race entry fee structure as opposed to 70%. And there's another caveat that's entire presentation is that I understand what I'm highlighting is probably only a 1 month potential issue, but I just focus on the attention span of Web3, and most people will give a project 1 month and they may not give it more than that. So I want to make sure that everybody has the best possible outcome in the month we're about to have. So without further ado, we'll dive into some of the numbers here. Some of this, I make plenty of caveats in here too. I drew all this up this morning after what started as a simple question. So looking at the races per day in August, I hand counted what's on the schedule for tomorrow is about 110. I don't know if that's every day is 110. I don't know if it's 105 or 115 and I just miscounted. Probably doesn't really matter in the context of things. And then days in August 31 gets you to a total season 5 race count of 3,400. I'm sure that's in the ballpark. I'm sure that's not that big of a deal if it's off by a little bit. Then you look at total entry fees. And again, this one is a total guess. And I know people probably actually know this information, and you would think a stable of our size would actually know this information. To me, that's more relevant if you're an investor in the game or you're a buyer of Crown, which hats off to all the Crown people out there. Good days for you in the last 2 days here, and good days for all the racers as well. It's certainly been great. But that's to say that this number really doesn't matter. You could change this number, you could double it, you could put it 25% of what's in there. It doesn't really matter. Then monthly Crown awarded. Now, shout out to Golden Stables. He gave me this 4.2 number. I think that did sound to be familiar with what I thought maybe it was. But again, it's another number. In this analysis, it doesn't matter. It's just what is your starting point. Same with the entry fees. So that gets you average Crown awarded per race of 100 or 1,200 basically. Now, I know when we talk about racing on some of these streams, a lot of people at least have introduced the concept of farming and know what it is. But I think there is kind of a disconnect in some of the more new users on when you look at a race lobby, you can see that it has a Crown award. So it'll be 1 out of 12 entrants or 1 out of 14 entrants, and it'll say the Crown award. That Crown award you see in a pending race, a race that has not started yet, is a Crown award per horse if the full field registered. So in all likelihood, you can probably, in a claiming race, you probably can't. In allowance, you probably can't. But in other races, you can more or less triple that. And that'll be kind of the focus of the next tab here. But if we were saying like all the entry fees were equal, which they're not, they're higher entry fees. The team has talked about stratifying that better. That's great. But again, we're making simple assumptions. So then let's move forward to September. I would assume that, again, assumption that could be corrected. If we're going to have coverage, it's going to look somewhat like an improved version of what we have now. So for Gen 0, if we're segmenting the population, that's 110 races a day. And for Gen 1, that's 110 races a day. I think that is a realistic way to approach the conversation, because I'll switch screens here and get you to, shout out to the gap data guys. Power BI. Let's just do the whole window. I don't have anything to hide on my computer. Okay. So again, shout out gap data. Pulling up their Power BI to analyze the entire population of horses. So there's total count now that's been dropped, foals have dropped. Obviously, we read this week already, but those aren't reflected in the population yet. So racing right now, we have a little over 1,200 racing right now. So that is your Gen 0 racing population for all intents and purposes. I'm going to switch tabs, and I'm going to do foals and foals that are age 1. So this is the Crop 1 crop that I've been referring to so far. Total population is about 1,300. So again, Gen 0, about 1,200. Crop 1, about 1,300. So it would seem reasonable to me that the total races offered between Gen 0 and Crop 1 would be roughly the same. Now, a potential solution for what I'm going to talk about is maybe having less total races for the Gen 0 horses. There's many ways to tackle the conversation we're about to have. And one thing I'll highlight before I stop using gap data for a second is These populations aren't created exactly equally. The team put some of this in their blog, but I think it's easiest to draw up here and say that of crop 1, there are 419 S and S minus horses that are about to hit the track. To me, S and S minus means either S minus grade restricted if they still exist. I saw some commentary in the blog about that, or graded stakes, or even some claimers if they're the colts on the S minus side. If you go back, again, the total population was about the same, but if you do the same filter, you have 72. So crop 1 has 419, Gen 0 has 72. To me, that's a way to say that there's going to be a lot of pressure on racing crop 1s, because if a horse can't win at the very, very, very top, even if it's an S, because there are a dozen better S's at its archetype, it's going to move down a racing rung. And then that horse that was racing at that rung lower is going to have to move down a racing rung as well. And that's part of designing an effective race schedule. Like, certainly there's more to it than just what we're going to talk about today. But that gives you some pretty good insight into what we'll start talking about and what I'm seeing and how racing is developed, and why crop 1 and Gen 0, the risk profile of racing those horses is drastically different. So let's get back into the spreadsheet here. So we were just talking about that to say that I think the race count for Gen 1 and Gen 0 will be the same next season. That gets you to 6,600 races total. Now, here's the part where it kind of matters. I'm going to say that Gen 0 entry fees are going to stay the same. Again, another assumption. But if it was that for August, maybe it's even higher because crown price is higher. Maybe entry fees go higher. And again, maybe 500,000 isn't the right number, but you could take this number times 20% if you wanted to increase it. It doesn't really matter. Now, what they've told us, again, in bullet point 4 here, is juvenile races will have 30% cheaper entry fees. So what I've done, the only assumption I've really made here, is I've said total entry fees from Gen 1 will be 70% that of Gen 0, or 350,000. Why that matters and where that matters is the total crown award is the same as what it was last month, 4.2 million roughly. Again, you could put $1 million in there. For all intents and purposes, it wouldn't matter. What crop 1 is getting out of that is 41% of the crown, and what Gen 0 is getting is going to be 59% of the crown, if I could do Excel correctly. I'll round it up. So Gen 0 is getting more crown in their race lobbies than Gen 1, all else equal. Now, maybe not all else is equal. Maybe the team will tackle this conversation in the Q&A today, or they'll review this and have a deeper discussion within the team itself. At the end of the day, knowing what I know now, making the assumptions I just made and just showed you, Gen 0 horses are going to get about 60% of the crown next season allocated to their race lobbies. Now, we talked about maybe you cut the race count down to Gen 0, so then the total races is more in favor of Gen 1. Other things you could do is change the min horses from 4 to 6. There's 100 different things you could do. The team will have to make a decision on how comfortable they are with it. Chances are they're probably comfortable. Now, let's kind of dig a little bit deeper. So I will make this bigger. If we look at, again, this is outdated. Let me pull you the real number now. I saw it was tricking up when, it's just a touch lower. Shout out to Crown, 0.2039 at this exact second. So I'll drop that in, 0.2039. I also went back to May 12th, which was basically when we started live. The price of Crown then was 0.0542. There's been a lot that has taken place since May 12th with Crown. There's been a lot that's taken place in the last week regarding Crown. Crown has really kind of floated between that kind of 0.04 or 542 at the start of live, dipped down to about 0.035, and now it's kind of it retraced pretty quickly to 5 and then 6 and then 7, and now it's kind of gone parabolic in the last 2 or 3 days. So hopefully everybody out there has made some money trading their Crown or investing in Crown. But what I want to talk about, and it goes back to what I said when you look at the S minus and S populations for Crop1 versus Gen 0, for Crop1 it was what, 400 something, for Gen 0 it's 78. So if there's only 78 S's at Gen 0 at all, chances are you're not going to have 12 of them in the same race. But when we started live, we did start with some full fields. So they weren't always full fields. You can argue I cherry picked some race lobbies. I would say most fields were 65 to 75% full for the big races. So shout out to Monkey Tennis, Serena Star getting a nice win there. A 12 of 12 field right after we went live. If we come back to the spreadsheet, you can see 12 entrants out of 12 allowed. The way that third time is allocated crown is based on the race lobby, assuming full entry fees and full entrance. Again, that's another lever that they could play with if they want to tackle this differently. But that says if 4 people entered this race, basically call it roughly 1,700 crown would be allocated. If 12 horses entered that race, roughly 1,700 crown is allocated. So in the case that there was 12 entrants, each horse had to split that evenly. They each got about 141. Again, if you put 4 here, this number triples. See if I even drew that up the way. Yeah, so the number would triple. The entry fee in US dollar terms, and then the rake paid to crown stakers. And this is why I think the crown holders should care about this conversation, even if they're not necessarily racers, because the value proposition for crown outside of speculation is the growth of the game and the yield you can earn on crown. You earn more on your crown by staking it if 12 horses enter a race than you do if 4 enter the race. You would have to change the entry fees to $130 instead of what is in here in the total. Again, I drew this up this morning, so I don't have all the functionality fully built out, but I promise you the rake paid to crown stakers would be a third of the 78 that you're seeing there with an assumption of full field. So if you go into individual outcomes for that specific race, first place in US dollar terms made $156 in Derby prizes. So entry fees are accumulated, rake is taken out of that. The entry fees are paid out based on where you finish in the race. You win, you get about 60% of the pot, so on and so forth. In a 12-horse race, it pays 5th. If you only have a 4-horse race, it only pays the top 3. We said each horse in the race got the same pro rata share of crowns, so if they each got 140. At May 12th's price, so again, when we started live, this is not using grossed up, juiced up numbers from this week. The 5 cents or 5.42 cents, each horse in the race was getting about $7.60 in crown. So you take off their entry fee. The top 4 horses made money. And the rest of the horses lost money, some losing about 75% of what they put in. If you exclude what they're getting in crown, because keep in mind, they're getting crown in crown, they're not getting it in Derby. So for them to top up their Derby balance, there's going to be sales pressure on crown. They're going to take this person that lost money, or made money in total USD. So 4th place, he got paid in race winnings $28. He got the equivalent of $7.60 in crown, but he paid $32 in entry fees. So in true USDC terms, he's losing $4. He made 3.2 if he sells the crown, and that's kind of going to be the focus of this as well. Is when we get these juicy farming situations, it does lead to sales pressure on crown because they're not making money in Derby terms, which hurts. It could potentially hurt the crown price. Now they're similar race. I'll try to go through this one a little bit quicker. But this would have been probably the first Kentucky Derby qualifier. So shout out to the Pellener Fields, our old horse. Our actual horse got 3rd, 15 out of 16 entrants in that race. So the same thing applies in all of those respects. You would say that the crown per race stays the same, whether there was 4 horses in that race or 15, it's just how much each horse gets. So at 15, they each get 138. If there was 4, they'd each get 519 crown. So we'll put it back. Entry fee was $30. If 15 people entered that race, $90 goes to stakers. Now, again, if you put 5 here, $30 would go to stakers if my math's right. You just cut it in third because you earn race rate based on the number of entrants or number of entries in dollars. Similar breakdown here. Nice big win for Pellener Fields. Everybody gets the same crown. Take off the entry fee. Profit, 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 profit. We don't have that same dynamic up above where someone in true US dollar terms lost money but made profit, but this is the closest example. So he still lost 90 cents, but in US dollar terms, he lost $8.40. So is he going to be inclined to turn around and sell his $7.50 worth of crown? So again, more sales pressure. Now, if we look at how it's going, and in my opinion, and again, I don't mean to single out a single stable. I can tell you from our standpoint, we've never had a second stable, whether that is to try to get a second claimant on a horse or it is to actually be able to race your own race. So farming in the simplest terms, if anybody's new, is right now there is a 3-horse race entrant maximum per stable. To circumvent that, stables have created second stables where they enter either 1, 2, or 3 horses from, in addition to using their main stable. And in almost all cases, they're more or less spoofing race entries because the effective farmers aren't entering a horse into the race until 10 seconds left, or the best farmers are entering a true ringer, a horse that is probably going to win that race based on the existing Gen 0 population. And then they'll add 3 lowly horses within 10 seconds of the race lobby finishing. And this is not to absolve me from things that frustrate those people. I enter a horse that I think can win a race if someone is farming that race, and I only do that with 2 seconds left. So I'm not saying I'm innocent of anything that would piss people off. In fact, I'm probably guilty of it more than most. I'm not even going to click on the race because I don't want to shame anybody, but it was a race. The link's here if you want the file. I can send you the file. Maximum allowed entrance of 14. 4 people entered the race. Now, again, chances are all 4 people entered that race in the last minute to last 10 seconds even. Farmers have changed their tactics because they're tired of getting sniped. So sometimes they do put more horses in the race and hope that if someone sees 4 out of 14, no one else will bother entering that race because they get less crown, right? If 5 of 14 enter, then the crown per horse in the field drops to $593 instead of what it's at $741. Again, the crown allocated to the race lobby is based on as if all 14 entered and pay the entry fee. So it's going to be $29.65 no matter what. What changes is how much each horse gets. The entry fee for this race is $55. And because only 4 people entered this race, the rate that is paid to crown stakers is $44, even though the crown that was paid out from the race itself was $160. So this gets you to the point where you can basically follow this to see if I entered all 4 horses in this race myself, I would lose $44 in US dollar terms, but I would have $161 in crowns. So farming is essentially a Jupiter transaction of you exchange USDC and you get crown at, like, call it 15 or 4-1 in this case. Again, this is still using the May crown price for a race that happened yesterday. So now if you look at today's prices, and we just updated this before the race started, the payouts are the same. Let me group this column. Sorry, this is in Derby terms. 1 second. So now you get the apples to apples. One more to group. Again, sorry, I drew this up this morning. So the winner of the race doesn't change the payout. Second doesn't change. Third doesn't pay. What changes is the value of crown. And again, if crown was 5 cents like it was in May, it's still pretty profitable to farm, basically 4x. You put in $44, the game hands you $161. In today's prices, you hand the game $44, they hand you $605 worth of crown. Even at a break-even price, where in USDC terms, fourth place broke even, that price is, sorry, I got panes frozen here. Oh, I grouped it. Basically 7 cents. So if people want to say this is an argument only applicable because crown went up, even at 7 cents, fourth place is profitable to farm exclusively. Similar example down below. Shout out to Legal Farmer Stables. Legal Farmer got first, second, third, and probably a different stable with a similar name got fourth. Similar example, another race from the last couple of days, so we won't go through it in detail. The point of this entire exercise, and this basically sums up my monologue, so if anybody wants to join and talk about it, I'd be happy to have a conversation if you want to defend the farming or you want to question how I drew this up or see something done differently, is the how it started is what we're going to go back into. It's going to be tough races. It's going to be offspring from Serena Star that won that first race. There's going to be 470 S and S minus horses as opposed to 72 or whatever it was now. So do we want a model that awards less total crown to the Gen 1 horses when in all likelihood Gen 0 are going to have more 4-horse races? It's going to be mostly farming with the exception of some claimers and maybe some allowances, where Gen 1 will likely have, let's call it 6 to 9 entrants in a lot of races. So each horse is getting less crown because crown is paid out based on the number of entrants in the given race. So Gen 0 are going to get more crown per race in global terms because their entry fees are higher in those terms. And they're also going to get more crown individually per race they enter because the races will typically run with 4 horses, 5 horses, maybe if they get sniped. So my hope is the team would review this and see that, racing Crop 1 is going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of risk for people racing Crop 1. There's not a lot of risk in farming. If you get sniped and this goes up to 5 out of 14 and you get 2 that don't hit the board in USDC terms, that does not make and break the argument. Like I said, in today's crown prices, a successful farmer makes basically $550 net on $44 in entry fees. Like that's kind of insane. Don't we want to help the Crop 1 racers that are actually going to go up against top competition? If you come back into that race lobby, we looked at it earlier. Like, I can't tell you who's going to win this race before the race starts between, let's say we've got all 12 here. I even had 2 horses in there. I would say Jupiter could have won. Big A could have won. What's the condition? Is it's fast? So I'll cross off the soft horses. So Jupiter, Big A, Better Than Most could have won. Schmoopy could have won. Maya could have won. Indian Wells could have won. Diana, She's the One. Serena Star. So really I've only crossed off 1, 2, 3. So I'm saying it's a 9-horse race. A lot of what this Gen 0 races you're seeing now is it's a 1-horse race. And sometimes it's a 0-horse race. Someone just enters 4 at the very, very, very last second. And there are 4 Bs that are racing in graded stakes. There are 4 Bs that are racing for 100K claimers. No one's going to claim them. They're not worth 100K. But if you can get yourself into a situation where you put $44 in USDC terms in and cash out 604, and again, in all likelihood, they're going to have to sell at least some of that crown. To me, I think the deck is stacked against the Crop 1 horses, and I think we should try to incentivize Crop 1s because a lot of what we did to obtain new users before the spike in crown price, again, some of that is going to be more organic, is we had a lot of generous community members, whether it was GVG or YSM or OEB, say, if you buy a horse, I'll let you breed with my horse for free. Again, that was shaped from a position of this is going to be a breeding benefit for you, not a farming races benefit for you. And that person that took them up on the offer is more likely to find a field like this than they are a field like this. So I'll leave the rant there. Shout out to Nate LFC. He asked if I could draw this up in terms of if crown price is what it was today as opposed to May 12th, do people make money on the race? I think that's very useful. So I think the answer is going to be yes. And I see crown is even higher than it is when we started this stream. This is like the scene from The Big Short where they're talking about Bear Stearns stock price and it tanks during the presentation, although it's the exact opposite in this sense. I just want to make sure got this right. So they don't make money to get last, which I mean that would be a lovely situation. And in real life horse racing, that kind of tends to happen. The betting handle offsets all of the entry fees. They're only out $3. So if let's see, we could probably get there. What's the price at now? It's $23.74. I bet that actually pushes it over the top. $2.23 would for sure. 23.74. So I'll get back to that, Commish. So if at the exact price right now, yes, even 12th in a 12 horse race would make money. It doesn't really change my stance because my expectation is that, again, not financial advice, crown has gone up very fast. We've seen that what's being paid out to stakers in a lot of these races is $44, and what races are getting is $160. Now, if all the people that are in those races are holding that crown, maybe it can sustain itself. But I think in some cases, those people are selling it, that creates sales pressure. And then certainly if you get up to the top here, this person is making money and profit, but in USDC terms, they're losing $32.50 every race. How many times can you lose $32.50 in a very tough race without having to sell the crown that you're earning in the race? I see Kamisha's comment in the chat. I don't know why I don't see it on my screen. So let me see. So it stands, I was calculating crown at 0.05 per entry fee. I don't know what that means. Can you elaborate? Or if you want to hop up, like by all means, dude. I can make sure no one has reached out to me on Twitter on a second screen here to see if anybody did want to join. Bear with me while I buy a little time. If you lose the race. Oh, as a break even, 5 cents would be break even if you lose the race. Is that what you're referring to? Or you're just saying I wouldn't use the assumption of 23-cent crown. You would use the assumption of 5-cent crown, which is kind of how this was initially drawn up. Okay. We'll give him a sec. While we wait, if we have to come back to that, we can, but we can bask in the glory of the crown chart. Calc the crown received. At total race. Versus total entry fees. Oh, crown received at total race. I think it ends up in the same spot though, doesn't it? If you take this times... Oh, yeah. I mean, I understand your point. It's really semantics. Like, we're not talking about narrow margins at today's price. Again, you're saying do this calculation slightly differently. Yeah, you're buying crown at 5 cents. Fair. So you are getting... I mean, I would say you're buying crown cheaper here, but you're saying if you had a 14-horse race and 14 people entered, you're effectively buying crown at 5 cents. Yeah. And I have a true break even of 0.0742, but that's based on a 4-horse race. And maybe you're saying that's where it's slightly different. Maybe that ultimately matter. I hope we're never back to below 10-cent crown. But again, 10-cent crown wouldn't be out of the range of possibilities, in my opinion. That's not a bearish take. That's not financial advice. It's just how I see the game. So we don't have any takers in Twitter. And I said, like I said, I don't, I'm not surprised by that. It is midday. It was fairly short notice. I just wanted to get in front of an AMA where I hope there can be some conversation about how do we incentivize the behavior that we want to exist in the game. Do we want this behavior to exist in the game? More races are firing. That's great. More races are going to run. But what's going to the crown holders is proportionate to how many people are entering. So it's not the number of races. The number of races matters for photo finish lives, metrics, and activity and those types of things. So therefore, it's not worthless. But if we want crown to be sustainable, if we want racing to be sustainable, I think we would prefer to see a model like this. And you know what's a lot more fun to bet? A 12-horse race where I can only cross off probably 3 names, and I'm only crossing those 3 off because they're soft horses on a firm track. Commission's question, doesn't farming die by season 7? I don't think so, but I've faced this rebuttal all morning, so I'll address it head on here as well. This really is probably the biggest problem for a 1-month problem. But then the question back to you I would have is, what's the lasting damage of a 1-month problem? What's the average attention span in a Web3 project? Is it more than 1 month? And what I have a lot of heartburn about, and I've seen some commentary about whether the OGs are doing the streams for their own benefit. I hope no one actually thinks I'm doing those for my own benefit. I've fudded my own breeders on the previous streams. I'm telling you, I mean, I have 2 S's that are going to clean up in this meta if this happens in September. Absolutely clean up. I still think I prefer this model a little bit better. Yeah, 2-month problem. I agree, because the segmentation is still going to be there because 2-year-olds aren't going to race against 3-year-olds. So you'll just have farming with a better population of horses. It'll just be 3-year-old horses as opposed to Gen 0. And technically the Gen 0s can still race too, but it's going to be hard for them to win at that point against 3-year-olds. So it's not a forever problem. It's not a total defect in the game. I just would like to look at it from the standpoint of, if Gen 0 racing is effectively a Jupiter swap of USDC for crown, should we not actually have more of the crown going to the people taking the risk? So that's all I got. I appreciate Kamish hopping in the chat with questions. Anybody that, what am I doing for back-to-back breeding? Wow, now everything's free, isn't it? Everything's free. Fine. I don't think you baited me on purpose, but what I'll say on that is, God, I hope this trickles into the racing ecosystem itself. I don't want it to just be people buying bees to farm, and I don't want it to be people just creating bees because they just need to have a horse. I hope people realize that that's not a super viable strategy, and I'm not trying to extinct bees. I'm saying in the context of people buying bee horses right now, they're just doing it to transact with Jupiter, sell USDC, buy crown for a cheaper price. So I say that to say is, if crown holds anywhere near the stratosphere, anywhere near it, the Derby stimmy is not the stimmy. It is money going back into the system. I love that third time is putting money back into the game. Certainly a lot of this money that we're talking about is theirs that they're actually giving away. But I hope this goes back into breeding. But right now, I struggle to see kind of how those incentives are, because if we're talking about total breeding fees of 40,000 or whatever they were last month, which was probably a bigger month than they were this month, 40,000 versus the crown award next month is going to be 350,000. I thought someone calculated this morning that I saw. So you can put 40% of the Derby stimmy to the grade 1 races. You could put $500 in each grade 1 race. And it's going to pale in comparison to, again, if crown stays anywhere in the stratosphere, what the crown award is for racing. So racing becomes a volume game. It does not become a sport of kings game. It does not become a sport of breed to the top, breed with primetime, breed with churro, breed with Pellener Fields. Right now, we're just saying, have a horse. Just have a horse and click race enter. And that's great, and it's profitable. How sustainable it is, I don't know. So To answer your actual question, what are we doing for back-to-back breeding? We'll go in-house again. We'll just use different options that we haven't previously used. So that's Mars at LTS, which is our Scuba S. That will be probably Roland Garros at RTF, which is the S- we picked up from Monkey Tennis. I'm not positive on that one. Well, let me look. I'll even, because you guys tuned in the middle of the day, I'll even show you. It's even called Cheap. Breeding Season 4 Cheap. I think it's up to date. Oh, here's my breeding plan. There you go. Sneak peek for you. So I'm going to Apollo for left dirt firm. I'm going to Mars for left turf soft. And I'm doing a variation on right turf firm. Probably going to use Born to Run for the pieces that haven't used him yet, and Mercury for the pieces that haven't bred with Mercury yet. If I want to acknowledge where community members, I think, are taking advantage of the system, i.e. crown farming, I'll also acknowledge that this breeding plan probably shouldn't cost me $200 or $2,600 USDC. We are making... Oh, I missed one. Oh, it's right there. Probably 45 horses for $2,600, and some of these horses are going to be pretty good horses. So there's things that could change. There's things that I benefit from that other people don't benefit from. So this isn't a me versus the farmers type of situation. We have two horses that'll benefit from the meta if it stays at what it looks like it's going to stay. I just want things to be sustainable. I want people to want to breed with Primetime because the money is actually going to racers that are racing in competitive races at the highest level, not the lowest common denominator of let's get this race to run. Hopefully no one joins with an intent to win the race. So, all right. I know I said I was going to stop like 17 times before this. Crown's going to hit 25 cents live on stream, I think. Do we just wait for it? Oh, 26 cents. We don't even have to wait for it. So I'm going to wrap it there. Again, like I said, I don't think this is going to be a show that a lot of people watch live, but if the AMA happens this afternoon, we can reference some of the conversation here, and I'm happy to answer questions on my analysis. I'm happy to give someone my analysis. So appreciate you guys all for tuning in. We will see you next time.